All right, so back out at Leo Carrillo State Beach here in Malibu. Kind of an overcast day. I'm out here with Araya. We're both thinking of making something of this scene here. Araya is mostly attracted to the blue-green colors in the water near the rocks out there, and also the breaking waves in this area. And I think I'm gonna focus on those things as well, but then also the wet sand in the foreground. So you're painting on a 12 by 24 inch panel.
Yep, Home Depot.
Yeah, so how much is it for this panel?
I think it's like $9 for a pre-cut 12 by 24 like wood laminate panel.
Looks like maple ply, and then you just gesso it.
Just quick gesso.
Good to go.
Good to go.
I'll be painting on a 16 by 20 inch panel. I've got my usual palette of colors, but I did squeeze out some blue greens here. I've got some Viridian. And then this is Cobalt Teal from Gamblin. This one is Cerulean Pure, I believe from Gamblin as well. And then this one is some sort of turquoise from Utrecht, but I think actually what it is white with a little bit of phthalo blue. For my sketch, I'm starting with burnt sienna thin with odorless mineral spirits, and actually I got a new brush here. This is a number 3 natural bristle filbert. I used the straight edge to strike a line for the horizon, and I put it at about 1/5 of the way from the top here. And I think I want to have the colorful portion of the water be right here using rule of thirds. So I've divided the panel into thirds. And the idea is to put points of interest on the thirds. I'm starting out by placing the distant rocks. And you can see them right there. And there'll be some colorful water right around here. There's also a whitewater pattern in here. Looks like Araya's going savage mode as usual. Blocking in some general colors here, looks like.
Yeah, I wanted to keep them dark without getting too much white paint in there, and also keep the colors saturated a little bit.
All right, I mixed in a little bit of ultramarine blue with my burnt sienna, and I'm using this darker mix to add some definition to my shapes. At first, I'm just quickly sketching out the big shapes in order to see if I like the composition. And then once I'm okay with the composition, then I'll come in with slightly darker paint and define the shapes. There are a few small rocks in the water out here as well. And there's like a small one here. And the bottom of the rocks in the foreground are sloped because the sand is going in this direction. And I think it'd be nice having these diagonal lines to add a bit of diagonal energy to the painting. I think I'll also do that with the waves as well. In other words, the waves that are in the distance are more horizontal, but then as they come in, they'll be more on an angle. Actually, that might be a little too dramatic, but something like that. But I'm using a natural bristle flat. It's a number 6. And I am scrubbing in a dark color here. And this is a mixture of burnt sienna and a little bit of alizarin crimson. And I want to keep this mix transparent, and I don't want to make my rocks too dark because I do want to get some visible color into these rocks. But I do want to establish the general silhouette here. So I've thinned the paint a little bit with odorless mineral spirits. I don't actually have any medium with me today. In reality, the rocks do appear to be quite cool in temperature, kind of a blue-gray, but I'd like to have a bit of warmth in the underpainting or the first pass that maybe shows through a little bit in the finished product. I do plan on coming over this paint with some cooler tones. Even though it's an overcast day, I do want to have a convincing feeling of light in this painting. I've added a little bit of yellow ochre to the mix. I'm seeing a bit more yellow in the rocks in the foreground. It's such a joy using a new brush. I tend to use my brushes until they're really stiff and the bristles are short, so it's nice having a new brush. Every time I break out a new brush, I think I need to do this more often. I think it's a personality trait, actually. Some people use old, worn-out brushes, and some people do not. So at this point, I step back about 10 feet, and I'm looking at the shape of the rocks. I think I want to move this rock down just a little bit to break up this line. I don't want this line to be too straight. So I'll kind of move that rock down a little bit. I think that's better. There will be breaking waves along this, along the shoreline here, bits of white water. But the main thing I'm looking for is irregularity along this line. I don't want it to just be a straight line. All right, get some color in there.
A little bit.
Do you have some cobalt green on there, like this color right here?
Yeah, a little bit cobalt green, and then I also have some turquoise.
Okay, now, oh yeah, I see right here. Nice.
And brown.
I want to work on the reflection in the wet sand here. And so I'm looking at the shapes when the water goes out. And I've got to work quickly because obviously those shapes are changing very quickly. And I think being spontaneous with these shapes is the way to go. So obviously the rock is reflected there, and then there's a bit of dark here as well, like that. I think that's a good starting point right there. For the water in the distance, I'm starting with a mid-tone gray. It's kind of a dull purple. Got ultramarine blue, a little bit of titanium white, and alizarin crimson. And I'm going to leave an unpainted area here for a breaking wave on these rocks. And I think that by having this gray in the background, the colorful water in this area, the blue-greens, will stand out, hopefully. Painting is all about opposites, so having a desaturated color next to a saturated color could make the saturated color look more saturated. Trying to paint quickly and spontaneously here. Often the shapes you come up with when you're working quickly and not overthinking things are more interesting than if you're trying to carefully replicate what you see. Mainly what I'm trying to do is create an interesting whitewater pattern. The whitewater is a big part of the composition. Because it is the lightest portion of the composition, whitewater really does stand out. So I want to have an interesting pattern. I added a little bit of yellow ochre for the dark water in the foreground. All right, blocking in the sand. And I want to make sure that the value of the sand is not too light. Again, I'm comparing the value of the sand to the whitewater because the sand is darker than the whitewater. Digging into the blue-greens, I've got some cobalt teal here and cadmium yellow lemon. I want to put the bits of saturated blue-green in place so I can key the rest of the painting to those colors. So having some color here, and I feel like it might be good to have some color over here as well. And for the whitewater, I'm going to start with titanium white tinted with dioxazine purple. This whole area in here is kind of complicated, so I think I need to simplify it. I want to accentuate the reflection of this rock in the wet sand. Again, working quickly is the way to go here, not overthinking. It's kind of difficult to shift between composition mode and paint application mode. I want to have a well thought out composition, but then I want to apply the paint spontaneously. There we go. For the sky, starting with a mixture of ultramarine blue, titanium white, and a touch of yellow ochre. I've been trying to use up a bunch of paint that I have in my paint drawer at home, and I'm finding that I can get by with just about any sort of yellow, any sort of red, and blues I'm a little bit more particular about. I do need phthalo and I do need ultramarine, although I haven't tried colors like Prussian blue. I've used cobalt, but it's pretty expensive, And I didn't notice that much of a difference between cobalt and ultramarine. I am having fun playing with these different colors. All right, Oriah. Lots of nice action and color. Are you gonna punch up the color out here as well? I'm thinking of putting some of my, brightest colors around this rock.
Same, yeah. I was going to put some of my brightest colors in this patch of whitewater that's rolling over the rock here.
So at this point, the block in is done. I walked back about 10 or 15 feet, and I do like the shapes. So the next step is going to be to darken the rocks, but I don't want them to be too dark and heavy, even though in real life they're really dark. Got a mixture here of ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and a little bit of titanium white. And I'm using a number 4 natural bristle flat. This will allow me to get a little bit more definition into these rocks. And because it's a natural bristle flat, it's still sort of an awkward brush. It's not as refined as a synthetic flat. So hopefully it'll prevent me from getting too detailed. At this point, I've stopped thinning the paint. I'm just using the paint, the thickness that it comes out of the tube. I want to make sure that I leave some of these little warm bits showing through. I'm actually seeing quite a bit of blue on the rock in the foreground because I think it's reflecting the sky because it's wet. There's actually more warmth on this rock. I'm lightening the water a bit and also changing the color. The water is reflecting the gray sky, and so I want to be a little bit more accurate with the color and value here. Using thicker paint, I've got to be more deliberate with my strokes, but I still do want to create a feeling of motion. All right, so I think I'm going to stop here. I don't want to overwork the painting. I decided to desaturate the rocks in the background a bit so that the blue-greens would stand out more. And the biggest challenge was applying the paint without medium. Very difficult. So you done? You calling it?
I should have called it 20 minutes ago, but I'm calling it now.
That's always the way, right?
Always, yeah.
As usual, love the texture. Loads of thick paint. And great color, too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Looks great. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. And I'll also put a link to Oriah's Instagram below too, so check it out. Other than that, stay creative. I'll see you guys in the next video.